Two. Hey, folks, let me ask you a question. Do you know yourself? A lot of people say, oh, man, I have so much self-awareness until work happens, family happens, relationships happen, and then you find out. But we are talking with some fantastic people. I love this book. I love this company. It's changed our company personally. But we have David Kolbe and Amy Bruske. Welcome.
Great to be here, Carrie. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah. So I think people have seen some of the photos. I mean, you had a full room, you had this amazing event, and you had everybody in the room had your book. And I was like, yes. But first of all, why write the book? And I think through that, we'll hear the Kolbe story, but why write the book?
Amy, I'll let you start because I think you really drove it.
Sure. Well, here's the deal. We are tired of meeting with people who are so late in their career, 50 and 60 years old, saying, if I just would have known some of these things about myself, I would have made different decisions.
Wow.
So we know a lot of people who have big goals. They're doing amazing things. But what we want to share with everyone is it doesn't have to be that hard. We've got this missing component about people that if you just knew this, all of your decisions would become more clear, and achieving these big goals and things that matter to you can be so much easier.
I love that. And when we sat down to talk with you about the book, this phrase kept coming out, do more and more naturally. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is that good? It's kind of like any company where you're too close to it, you don't see the genius. And I'm not saying you didn't see it, but I'm saying that when the average person hears this and sees that amazing book in the corner, I mean, the book is beautiful. It makes sense. David, what does do more naturally mean?
It means, as Amy was saying, sometimes people struggle. They're working really hard and they feel like they're not getting where they want to go. And it doesn't have to be as much of a struggle as it is. So this is not, the do more part is not, oh, hey, take on 17 more tasks that are just going to add to your stress level. It's figuring out that when you know who you are, you have the clarity around your strengths and you understand how to apply those strengths, you can get so much more done because you're doing it naturally. It no longer feels like that struggle.
Wow.
So you're accomplishing more, you're less stressed, you actually have energy left over for some of the things that you didn't ever think you could get to. And that's why we really are driven to help people figure this out, because it changes lives.
It really does. And I was just on a phone call with our friend Dan Sullivan, strategic coach. By the way, he loves Kolbe. I think he might be your top client ever. I don't know. Is this true? Maybe.
Probably,
He's
yes.
a big
Probably.
fan. Yeah, we really appreciate that.
Yeah, but he used the word, hey, listen, Kolbe conflict. In other words, he said that whenever there is a misalignment in the office, it's because of a Kolbe conflict. And I know that's shorthand. And if you don't know the Kolbe world, what does that mean, Amy?
That is basically that people have very different needs when it comes to solving problems, how you make decisions, how you execute. And the good news is the differences are actually helpful. That diversity helps us get more done.
Oh, that's
but
good.
The challenge is if you don't know that about this other person, you can start taking it personally. That person, David, might really frustrate me and or push back on something. And instead of seeing it as necessary and constructive, I might take it personally. So that conflict is actually something that if you're aware of it, you can anticipate when it happens. And more importantly, you can capitalize on it so that we can actually get more done because we have this multiplier effect with our differences. And by the way, this happens at home too. You're solving problems, let's say with your significant other at home, and the same dynamics can play out as a parent, as a spouse, whatever it might be as well.
And there's another kind of conflict. I mean, one is person to person, but oftentimes we see people have a conflict with their job. So their job demands a particular way of going about things, or at least oftentimes people think it does. We challenge that sometimes. Does the job really have to be done that way? But if there's a big gap between who you are and the demands of your role, that's a conflict. And the solutions are a little different than what Amy was alluding to with the conflict between two people, but they're still solutions.
I was just at a coach workshop last week in Chicago, and someone was saying, you know what, I'm going to get a different strategic assistant. And I said, do not hire the person until you both go through the Kolbe. And then they're like, oh, is this the Kolbe I don't know. I might be butchering this, but is there like a perfect fit? Is this something?
It's the right fit
The right
is you use the right fit software to come up with what we call a range of success that says this is what you're looking for in this role. And then you can look at candidates and say, did they match that reasonably well? It doesn't have to be perfect. You know, no job's perfect. There are always going to be little problems. But yeah, it's a really simple, straightforward process to just say, what are the demands? Is somebody going to match it? Go from there.
Yeah, because left to our own devices, we end up hiring our own clones, or we have our own biases about how things need to get done. So this adds this level of going through a process where it can be a little more methodical and objective to help you get the right fit.
I'm going to go so bold, everyone, to say that Kolbe can save marriages. Now, let me explain. Let me explain here. So you just mentioned it, Amy. Let's say a husband and wife are saying, hey, let's go on a trip to spring break. And let's just call the guy a quick start. And we'll explain what that means for people who don't know. But let's say the guy's a quick start and the wife is a fact finder. And he might interpret her fact finding questions as, what, you know, you're always shooting me down. You're not buying in. Why is it so difficult to sell you on it? But really, you're just saying that this is how they're wired. And talk to us about that. Like, what does that mean? Because I'm a 4-5-8-3. I'm not saying this. This is not marriage therapy for me, but I am a quick start. But what would you say about that concept?
Well, I'll kick this off, and then I'm gonna hand it to David because he actually wrote this story in the book.
Oh, yes.
I think we've all been through this, but yeah, here's what we need to remember. What we're talking about is your instinctive need to solve problems in a certain way. This is something that all the research that we have shows is unchanging. So over time, this is so innate to you. So you're not going to change your partner. This is something that's constant, which is fabulous because you know who to count on for what. Yes. But the vacation example is a real one because hopefully when you're at home, you're not always solving problems together. When you're on vacation, you really are making some decisions together. So David actually wrote his real life story in the book.
Well, and the key, when we get back to the way you started, it not just can save marriages, like it does.
Wow.
I did a presentation recently, and one of the people in the audience had been using Kolbe, knew about it for a long time. And he came up to me afterward and said, hey, I've been using this in the business, but I just have to tell you, I think it saved my marriage. I'm like, really? Tell me. He's like, no, my wife said it changed our marriage, and I honestly don't know if we would be together. But the reason is fairly simple, even though that's so dramatic. It's when you understand your partner better and understand that this is who they are and the things that they're doing that frustrate you, it's just driven by what's unchanging in the way they do things and take action. So as Amy was saying, you're not going to change them, but when you understand, and by the way, it can still be frustrating. Sure. But when you understand what's driving it, it's no longer so personal. It's no longer.
You don't attach like a motive to it, then, right?
Right.
It's not that they're doing it to you. They're just being themselves. And then the second part, that's probably the more important part, is, okay, now I appreciate it, and now we can work together better. Now we understand where to divide and conquer. So the vacation example is, hey, and this is for me, my wife is an initiating follow through. So she's a very systematic, planned, organized person. She sets up all those vacations. She has the itinerary. She makes sure that everything's going to flow. I'm the opposite end of that spectrum. So we don't get together to do all of that stuff because I would drive her nuts sometimes. Sure. But when we're on vacation and when the inevitable snafu happens, the flight gets canceled, the bags get lost, it's my turn to step up because I'm that open-ended, okay, we don't have a plan for this. What are we going to do? So like one time, our whole family's traveling. All our luggage was lost getting to New York. It doesn't get to the hotel. A day passes. It keeps going. And I just said, I'm finding out where the facility is. I'm getting a taxi. I'm going and I'm getting my bags because we could track them. They were at the facility, but this had happened to so many people. They couldn't get them to us. That's not her thing. She's more there's a certain plan I can anticipate. I'm a more, great, let's just fix this problem.
Perfect.
So,
I love this.
When we know that, we're able to step back and let the other person lead when it's their time, when their strengths are what we really need, and appreciate them.
So good. So on the book, I know there's such power in handing somebody a book or getting used to the Kolbe ethos by just, diving in. But what are you seeing? I mean, the book just came out, and yet we're the reviews are popping and people are loving it, and you got it out in 4 versions: ebook, audiobook, hardcover, softcover. So what do you kind of hear? And by the way, look at this. It's like everywhere on Amazon. I love it. This is just so good. But what are people saying that you're kind of hearing off record? Amy, we were just like, people are buying 10s and 50s and 100s because they're getting it. Why is that?
Yeah, well, I was just on a webinar yesterday where people said, I love that it's bite-sized. I mean, I love that I was able to read it on a flight. So that's the one thing that was kind of a goal, is we wanted it to be
500 pages. Yeah,
that's right, that you could get through pretty easily, but it's jam-packed. It's got a lot of stories and examples. So I've heard the stories are really helpful. People love the size. And what I've heard from 3 leaders this week alone is the minute I read it, I knew I needed this for my whole team. So I think that's where the quantity is coming from. And we're so excited about that, because that just means it's accessible. Yes, it's really important for leaders, but leaders right away know that anyone in my organization can get something out of this. Frankly, it doesn't have to even be someone that is currently working, but I think anyone who cares about their career or aspiring to just do more and find some joy in the everyday getting things done. So that's what I'm hearing the most. And I think that's why we're having the quantity purchases.
That's so good.
It's exciting.
Who is it? Shannon Waller, who says about, when you're working with a strategic assistant, because I'm assuming that a lot of people are probably watching this, that is a major hire. I mean, that's one of the most important hires. And Shannon, at least, I think it is the one who tells me you don't want somebody who's over a certain number away. In other words, if I'm a quick start and I hire a strategic assistant who's a 1, I mean, that's almost like not even smart, because I'm going to be like, what are we doing? So there is this thing that, like, you don't want to just go through a ton of spouses, but for a strategic assistant, you can choose. And what is that formula-ish?
It's a little different for everybody. One thing I will say is, people who understand Kolbe and themselves a little better, sometimes you can have a bigger spread because they know what to expect and anticipate. But like, that's the expert level. I would say in general, absolutely what you're saying is true. And we see it all the time where a lot of times people think they want somebody at the total opposite end of the spectrum, especially with follow through. So I'll just say, for me, to and follow through, I want my assistant to be really structured and organized and systematic. Well, guess what? I drive them crazy. They drive me crazy if we try to impose ourselves on each other. So a lot of times you really do want that person who's more in the mid-range to complement who you are, rather than be at the opposite end of the spectrum. It can work. I've seen it work, but it's the exception, not the rule.
Wow, that's great. So I know that we have a mentor who says the DOS conversation, like, hey, if we were sitting here 3 years from now, what would be success look like for this book? But truly, like, fine, 12 months from now, you're saying, hey, this book was a great success. What metrics are you going to use? I mean, one is certainly how many it sold, but like, what are you looking for?
That's a good question. Oh, we've been asked that.
I'd say, one of the things that we look for just with the business is lives empowered. That's our North Star. We kind of have a mission. We are a mission-driven business. We want to help people understand their instinctive cognitive strengths and then figure out how to use those strengths to achieve the things they care about. And that's what we want this book to do. I would like that to be more people. Frankly, we don't even have to sell that many books. If somebody buys the book and they hand it to 100 people and that's 100 lives empowered, you've made my day. I love that. That's what we're about.
Oh, that's so good. I love what Kathy says. Because listen, you can tell I'm a big fan of this book and the message and everything. But after I took the test, isn't she the one who says, like, you got the perfect score, after, tell us why, because you might be like, that's just a funny thing to say and that's kind of cute, but actually she means it. And what do you mean by that?
Well, and we're talking about the test, and people might not know, we actually have a Kolbe assessment, the Kolbe A index, which measures how you naturally get things done and solve problems, as we've talked about, how you execute. And so the first thing that Kathy says to everyone when you get your result is you got a perfect score. And her point is it's perfect for you. You're such a unique human in your needs and how you go about and approach getting things done every day. So it's perfect for you. And the point of that is once you get some clarity, and this kind of brings us to one of the things, the format of the book are these 3 C's that we find. People say, why are some people more productive? It's because they've figured out how to apply these 3 different things in their life. So the first thing is just getting clarity around your strengths. And for a lot of the clients we work with, that just starts with getting their Kolbe A index, which is a very simple assessment and immediately gives you that the depth to here are your instinctive strengths and your problem solving strengths. And then once you've got that clarity and you know this is perfect for you, you are perfect in whatever way you've been created, that next step is commitment. So the second C is commitment. Now you get to make different choices every single day on how you use those strengths. And so we walk people through, we're all told say no to more things, but there's this model that we've been giving where time management matters a lot. I used to teach time management classes. That was something that I did years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not really just about managing time. Sure, there's a component to that. It's about managing this mental energy that you have to get things done. And so if you understand your strengths, you'll start making different decisions. And when you do have to work against what's natural to you, you won't have that same level of guilt. You won't have that same level of effort that you're going to keep putting into trying to change yourself. So your perfect is about embracing these strengths and then capitalizing on that. And then the last C is really what we've been talking about, which is collaboration. No one person can do it by themselves. So you have to know, when do I need that multiplier effect of getting other people involved? And when should I work independently to get things done? David had the great example of sometimes even when you're in a partnership or a spousal relationship, I'm going to solve a problem by myself versus forcing collaboration. But when you can collaborate with just the right people, you're just going to get more done. It's just more fun. It's more joyful.
That's so good. So to me, I mean, this makes a ton of sense to get this book because, you know, we all have limited time and resources, but ROI, I hear that all the time, return on investment. Well, you getting the right people in the right jobs, you know, Jim Collins can talk about it, but you actually help us do it. And this book helps us do it. So I'm going to encourage people, just like they said, read it yourself, but then any team you're a part of, and listen, you don't need to be the CEO. If you're on a team and you read this and you think this will help your company, you go to your CEO and you say, look, I bought you a Christmas gift. We're going to read this. Can you read it? And then can we as a team talk through this? I mean, what a great strategy for the next year to get more done, literally. And maybe we close with this. Close with that story that you tell about the left hand, right hand. Remember that? I think it was you telling me that story where, like, can I write with my left hand or my opposite hand? Yes, but it's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's using the example of handedness, left versus right, to show people there's a way you're hardwired. So if you are a right-hander, like most people, you write with your right hand. You didn't have to be taught. That was just normal. You did it because it's who you are. If somebody says, hey, write this letter, handwrite this letter, but use your left hand, it's torture. It looks bad. It takes longer. You're stressed out and frustrated.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with other parts of your mind. When somebody says to me, the open-ended adaptable person, hey, we want you to follow a routine and a pattern and come up with systems and structures, and that's what you're supposed to do all day long. It's like making me write with my left hand, except it's worse because the stakes are higher. This is my job. This is my career. This is my marriage or my being a parent.
Wow.
And we don't need to do that. Like, I'm great at using this hand. Why don't you help me develop what I'm already good at and make me great at it, rather than force me to be not as bad at something that I'm not ever going to be great at.
I'm so glad you wrote the book. The book website is domoremorenaturally.com. Also, everything Kolbe is Kolbe.com, Kolbe.com. get the book, multiple versions. And David and Amy, thank you for being here today.
Great to talk to you, Carrie, as always.
Thank you, Carrie.